and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. I am Alex Perala. I'm here with my co-host and friend, Tony Bitzionis. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Alex. How are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
Just great.
And we're very lucky to be joined by Dario Betti from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. He's the CEO of the MEF, and the MEF has a lot of interesting reports and data, among other things, to offer insights for people who are interested in identity security, authentication, and just how people use mobile devices in general. So it should be a really interesting discussion. So Dario, welcome to ID Talk. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. Exciting.
So maybe we should just start for those who are not familiar with what the Mobile Ecosystem Forum is and what it does. If you could just give like an overview.
Sure. The Mobile Ecosystem Forum starts 25 years ago, almost to the date. Our birthday is within a couple of days.
Hmm.
And so we're very excited to reflect back on 25 years of history, and so much of it has changed in the last. But for, I would say, the last 7, 8 years, at least, if not 10, 12 almost, identity has risen up to one of those key questions around mobile. There are many others we covered. We covered messaging, content, enterprise solutions, the way things are going. But the way I say covered is provide a platform, a place, a safe place for everybody to come and show and talk about it. Because a lot of the issues we were seeing in the ecosystem are starting to be the long chain of different parts, different players that need to come and talk together. So within the mobile industry, you might have mobile operators, device makers, solution providers, content providers. We have banks, we have retailers that are interested in these. So these are all some of our 230 members. And as I was trying to explain for the relevance also for your talk, identity has been one of those things that kind of keeps all of them aligned and together. It's one of the key questions we keep on being referring back to in different phases. So exciting to be here to learn from you as much as, and to invite you eventually to come and talk to our members as well. But if there is anything that I can share, meanwhile, some of the discussions or some of the numbers, research, market research we do, I'll be happy to.
Okay, great. And to be clear, because I mentioned your reports, but the MEF also does events, right?
Exactly. So we are not-for-profit, as I said, founded by our members, and what I'd like to do it's interact, find places to talk, to discuss, to invite external people. We have roughly 50 events globally because we're a global association. I'm calling from our office in London, but we have people across the continent. And we do reports. And then some of those reports are historical. We've done some of them for more than 10 years. I mentioned in consumer surveys, there will be 11th year of consumer survey we do, so there will be the 11th, but equally we do ad hoc reports. For instance, the latest report is an identity verification report. We are monitoring all the different countries that are currently discussing or implementing some solutions. And I thought it was going to be a short report. I saw it coming to a very, very long list of boxes. So there's a lot of things happening, things like that. Exciting to see that a lot of our members equally are paying attention. So definitely the physical reports. We do podcasts, we do events, etc. Anything we can find an excuse to have a little chat about.
So about the identity trends report that you just mentioned, do you have like what's your top line takeaway for us? As I'm guessing identity fraud is on the rise and a serious threat. That's what we tend to see.
Have you read the final page of the conclusion? Well, there are some trends that in the industry that are very obvious. By doing for 11 years, I think what helps is see a bit of a trajectory and trends as well. That is true. We now have a series of reports because we ask people in 15 different countries, visit 17 countries, where 54% roughly of the population globally and 65% of mobile phone users. So that's a big numbers we're already asking to. And what it shows is that as much as we like to big numbers, is the last few years, our index that we have on consumer trust on mobile services and data has been stagnant. And it's in itself, it's not just it doesn't move too much, plus it's but it's not a very good number. It's 55 out of 100. Well, be positive. You know, they are well over the 50 mark. Be negative, there are still 45 levels to go before you can actually say that people really trust you. And part of that, it's an aggregate function, this index of multiple things. The main element is awareness. Are people aware of issues? And yeah, and that's growing a lot. So people are getting more in tune that they have to protect their identity, they have to protect their data. And what they feel more a lack of is controls. What do I do with it? How? Make sure. And specifically some of the safeguards. Sometimes I don't need to control it, but can somebody look after it? And they're getting to be more skeptical that people are getting to look after it. Now, maybe at this point, different things come into play. You know, you could say that the national indices that usually you need to look at. Sometimes when you look at Germany, you're supposed to look at how Germans would, you know, be more conservative in the reports, etc. And that we can almost see a clear dichotomy between the developing country, the people that have got the highest level of confidence, Indonesia, South Africa, China, India, Brazil, Mexico, Egypt. These are the top ones. So in all those places, and the others a bit more conservative, but most conservative of all is Japan, I would say, that probably that index shows 36, which is not. Canada, well, I got two Canadians here, so I'd like to test the actual test. Canada had a very low number. It was potentially one of the lowest, definitely the top, maybe the bottom three, I'd say. It did have a bit of a jump, and you know, potentially that's some surveys sensitivity as well, but still very low. At 51, and it used to be 49 the year before, and before lower. So we are thinking that there is a certain element of not trusting too much what's happening out there in Canada. I don't know what it's is referring to, but I think that's something we looked at. Or France, scandals, obviously, and press changes. Big scandals in France dropped 9 points in the same year. So you can actually see how there's a sensitivity of the discussions we're having. But yeah, all of that very interesting. I wish I could tell you that everybody's like Indonesia, where 75% of the industry of a track index is showing fantastic. We do trust things, but there are lots of things that people are doing that are showing that kind of concerns. 66% of people globally are avoiding to sharing their data of their identity on the internet. Now, that is probably an unknown number, because what would be what if they really shared? What would be economic impact of being able to share that more freely? And also the number of people that download apps because they're not sure what's happening behind it, etc. There is quite a consistent withholding of information because people do not feel safe. So the industry could look at it as a potential to grow. Until now, we also been told that, you know, but people are happy with it because it's a price you pay, but you get free apps, you get great services, which is absolutely true. So we monitor that too. But I should say that for the last 3 years, the curve has gone flat, if not even going down. So the perceived value, specifically on apps or overall, I'm safe kind of questions, it's not going that grow anymore, but the level of distrust grows. So this gap of, well, I'm getting something for it, hey, free services, that's great. But I'm losing something, the security is starting to grow. And at what point would the industry start to suffer? Really, because we haven't secured these well enough. Now, careful, or I keep on talking for the next 20 minutes. I'm sure you don't want me to, but I hope that I give you some of the flavors of some of the points we'd like to bring our members and our people to say, well, is it worthwhile for us to stop and to analyze some of the things that are happening here? Should things go differently?
Yeah. Sorry, Tony, you go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, this is sort of an aside, but it's just something I'm curious about. If you think, or if your research has shown, if there's any correlation between, because you were mentioning that some of the countries with the highest levels of trust are emerging markets. And one thing that I've thought about in the past is here in Canada, and we are very untrusting, as you pointed out, until pretty recently, the entry for even acquiring like a mobile device was pretty expensive. It's only been the last few years, unless you're willing to get something secondhand, that you could get a smartphone for under 500 bucks Canadian. And I've noticed that there are a lot of emerging markets where they've targeted Google and Samsung and everyone except for Apple have targeted where you can get entry-level phones for 150, I'm giving this in Canadian dollars, but for relatively affordable. So do you think there's any correlation between some of these markets where people might have greater access to devices, developing that trust earlier on? Because I know I was fairly old before I got my first phone, and I have relatives who we had to purchase phones for because they were like, I'm not spending money on that. And so for them, naturally, I think they would be slower to come to even consider sharing any sort of personal information that they didn't need to digitally. Am I way
Well,
off?
well, you're opening an entire fantastic chapter that I'd love to discuss. The, is there a correlation? I think there is a correlation. The real question is what is the potential big cause behind it as well. Um, and I'll give you more correlations. I don't know if it's going to answer anything, but you can help me to work on it. So these countries are the mobile first countries. These are the countries where it wasn't just cheaper, but it was either impossible or much more expensive to go and get a fixed line. So their first view is linked to that view of this is the internet, And so there's almost like, what else do I have? There is also a more positive because they'd never had some of those generation, they'd never had as much exposure to all of the services they had. So they are much more positive, and they probably have grown very quickly a realization how powerful that was. So they're still enjoying a bit of a honeymoon, it could be. Now, if you look down, the questions, are you aware of problems? I'll probably say that they are aware. If we ask sometimes some other probing questions, you could probably challenge, but they've got a very positive view of everything that happens. That's not necessarily true for some of the users in the word developed used to be before, the developed word. Necessarily, I think it's a fix first for us at MEF.
Mm.
However, it changes a lot. The highest level of diversity, if you want, is in the developing world. If you are older, I shouldn't say old because I'm very close to that. If you're older than 55, and if you happen to be a woman, oh, yep, surprisingly, you're less likely to have access to a lot of those mobile personal services that in the developing world. And some of those countries, things have changed a bit. France has been improving a lot, but you still, if you look at Germany, Italy, to an extent, even believe it or not, UK, US, that is still there. And there's another interesting element that I like to say, which is if you go down into the numbers, if you ask how much money they have, and we cover that, there is a potentially correlation of wealth and concern. And if
Mm.
you have less money, you are less concerned. Take what you have. Probably you have less to defend. I don't know, but you have more access to more education or more sophistication too. Could well be. So I'm not able yet to put it all together into a nice uh, link of causality. But I do think that your question is very revealing of the different dynamics that we are seeing. We're seeing an
Mhm.
incredible amount of new users for the last few years, really enjoying it. We're still seeing some existing users, but smartphones have been existing for a few months. So I think all of these things are kind of mixing together. Potentially might solidify in a couple of years. Give us a list of the next round and see if we can find you something more.
There's an interesting corollary trend that we've kind of talked about before on this show, which is that um, actually we were talking about this with Tech 5, I believe, that they're working on these large scale digital ID programs in developing countries, like a bunch of different countries, but among others in emerging markets. And they were kind of saying like there's a lot of enthusiasm there. And I think part of it is that it's a chance to kind of leapfrog because there aren't these regulatory challenges. And then I think about the EU, where there's a huge regulatory apparatus, and somehow that seems to make people less enthusiastic about these new technologies, or maybe just progress is slower, something like that.
We even checked when GDPR was introduced, because this was running obviously in 2018, and there are pros and cons. I have to admit that when we were people in the EU, not immediately, not the first year, but the second year, we started to refer back to, yes, I feel they probably could see something, even if it was refers to in the discussions. There was a sense, oh, I like that. So not everything is bad, but in terms of we were hosted in our events, Bhutan, for instance, talking about one of the countries that has got. So they multiple times they came to discuss their solutions, and it shows the exciting of the entire country um, about what they're doing. And they're believing there's a leap forward. There is a great sense of fulfillment of next stage and so on. In Europe, things are a bit more stale. I don't think very many people would right now say that their identity solutions are exciting. But nevertheless, interesting fields. There are pros and cons, I would say, on both sides right now.
Hmm. I wanted to go back just to clarify like the trends that we started talking about trust. What exactly do you mean when you are measuring trust? Like, is it trust in sharing data and using online services, or is it bigger? Is it like just trust in general?
So we present to them apart from asking, we ask three, four different things. We bring it together and we summarize it to say. But uh, the definition of trust in itself was a PhD topic, which
Mm.
one of our members is actually doing, and so we're lucky to have these views, and very difficult to do. So we try to as I say, this potentially uh, um, a combination of multiple factors that goes of I know what's happening. I'm in control. I have a control. And there are other things that also are acting in my defense if I were ever to. It's not just me versus. Specifically, the control and the data is the diffusion and sharing of your personal information, as well as financial or personal harm that might be coming. Eventually, is what we talk about: financial distress or being, identity theft and so on. Spam equally included. Is somebody gonna hunt me down with information? So we try to have that kind of all-encompassing a bit view, which is get summarized as I was mentioning to this number, and the number is nothing but a combination of these multiple factors coming together.
Mm.
You asking me before if, as you were touching, are people being more or less exposed to harms? Um, we define a long list. We have a long list of 20. We ask and include simple things: spam, identity theft, smishing, phishing, etc., etc. Surprisingly, what they respond is pretty consistent up to the decimal point. So we say most of them have got 3.6 of those in average. So there's not one thing that happens, there's multiple things. There are different clusters of what things that they are. But there is everybody feels exposed, except for 10% of the population, which says, I'm nothing, pretty much, or 7%. Everybody seems to say, yes, something happened to me, which I didn't like it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not growing massively. It's very stable, the amount of things that happens. Now, the severity, which is the difference of the impact of those, is potentially what we're seeing. So we also calculate financial loss to consumers and to business due to, let's say, the attacks in mobile. Now, that seems to be growing very, very fast, by the way, just to compare it like for like. But the actual amount of things, specific elements, it's pretty stable.
Okay. What about like attitudes toward authentication? I think you have some data about that. Um, and I believe you mentioned in an email that SMS-based authentication is falling out of favor, if I have that right.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about a couple of things what we are seing. We talk a lot about messaging as a one-time password, two-factor authentications was so common. And again, regulation drove that at one point.
Mhm.
It is still the most universal activity, as in having a mobile phone, receiving SMS because it's available, cheap, and easy. It still gets a lot of easy interaction. So the easiness is still out there. Unfortunately, never was too secure because the SS7 standard was never been designed in 1977 for these reasons. So surprising, somebody found a way out to play with it. And it's this trade-off. It's a security. So security versus availability. And overall, SMS is always one for the availability, but never was the most secure service. Hence, it's two-factor. It's a secondary factor. It's never a factor by itself, for instance. However, on top of that, and I think we chat over it as well, other things have happened, meaning cost, which is a very important thing for the rest of the industry, is not the supply side. Sorry, supply side rather than demand side. It's not people are saying, please don't send me SMS. People seem to have learned, and we ask that. And we ask, are you happy? Do you like receiving one-time password? And people say, well, oh, it's okay. It's not the most exciting things I can do in the day. But they seem to well accept the idea that it might happen. There's an additional security. I can see it. I have control over it. They like that. I have control over it. I can see when it happens. It's me putting it, even if it's a bit annoying, it happens. But the supply side, I'm now saying, especially if you are exposed, if you're an OTT, one over the top, of an app and so on, you might have to send one-time password to globally to lots of countries. Some of those countries have realized that they had a fantastic opportunity to increase prices, and some of the price increase went to 3 digits, 300%, 200%, we've seen in prices in a year, which is pretty. It started with a small price, but once you start doubling it year over year, it starts to become a bigger concern. So some
Yeah.
of the suppliers have now reacted and said, you know what, maybe SMS is not the best. Plus, we might pick something which is more secure. There is still a concern, and they still have to use SMS in some cases because some of the users might have nothing better to rely on. But we'll see. At least we're trying to substitute and change it a lot. So definitely, Alex, there is a interesting new change in the way some of the companies are trying to move away from SMS to something else, let's say.
I have a personal way to illustrate this problem, which is I have a online service that I regularly sign into, and they always want me to authenticate on their app, which is an annoying app to use. And I always just say I didn't get the notification, send me a text because I'm too lazy to go and like grab my phone and sign into their app. And then I just get the text and I sign in. So I know that's not good on my part, but I'm also learning that it may be costly for them to have to do this, which I like because I hate this company. So this is illuminating for me.
And we're gonna see. I think security is becoming cost in general, and but I hope that a lot of our companies out there, the security and the ability, as some of you will do, people will say, to people need to be behind it and like to use it. But it's important to get the mixture right. And some of the companies really need to reassess. If you're just entering into a service and you don't have any details of financial transaction, well, how much security you might need. But if you're going to be using something which is very important, what threshold are you going to put as a business for a consumer, or as a consumer, what kind of level would you like to ask? I have a lot of fun with banks calling me, especially my banks, saying, I am your bank, can you give me your details? And I say, well, you know what, that's not the right way of doing it. You don't call somebody and just ask their details, because how do I know who you are? And it's funny because I actually expect this call. Sometimes I know that this call is coming, but because I'm stubborn and like to be, I don't accept that. I say, no, you need to find a better way. Is one person, potentially is going to be more, and potentially is going to be a real feeling between the consumers. We need to demand a better security for our identity and for our authentication and for our data. And when data goes away and is mistreated, shouldn't be just, oops, we just sell all your, we just happen to have all of your financial data available to a community of hackers. Change your password. That's probably a bit disappointing. So that's what also we're trying to do. We need to make sure that security is built within the chain,
Mhm.
inside, outside.
So the companies that work with MEF, like let's say banks and telcos, what what do they prefer? Like what kind of authentication for mobile do they actually want people to use? Or is there a lot of debate about that?
I would say beauty is in the eye of a beholder or something like that, right? So even within banks, there might be very different views of what
Mhm.
happened. Interestingly, I'll say sometimes even within the banks will be a lot of different solutions being applied and not be knowing to the other department that this is happening. So there's a lot of internal reassessment that all of us, I think, need to do. What are your identity policies? How do you use them? Roughly, we always speak with the enterprise users, which not only banks, to say, the more there is a realization that there is not a one solution fit all. That's also at one point there might be, but there might be an arsenal of things you might want to use, or even to enrich or to confirm. So we talk about SMS messages. You might want to talk at one point at RCS, which is another different technology, but very similar messaging still we're talking about. Networks, if we're talking still about mobile operators, are deploying what I would say value added in terms of data added. Is this a real line number? Is this person here, location, and so on? All of that information can provide a much better pictures of what's happening where you are. Again, when you need that information and you want the double check. And equally, if you go down, we talk about biometrics, we can talk about your devices, your apps. All of that can take part in that. But the world is a bit complex and there isn't going to be a single solution, it seems right now. You might have to be able to orchestrate a variety. An orchestrated variety also means the security between them does not need to have gaps because that's where you see those issues happening. So there's a lot to think about, and think holistically is probably our big message to the industry. If you want, you could just look at it each one of them as a separate individual choice, and it, it isn't. It's
Mhm.
still the total that makes your security, not the security of a single channel. It could be a very poor channel, but in the way you use it in terms of security, it works perfectly for what you're doing. It can be a super secure system, but it's not going to be finding the right people wanting to use it. People don't like apps, for instance, as you said, or they like to have they like to have fewer apps on their mobile phones. We check that. Apps is a more of a personal recurring thing. So I don't just want to have an app for me to go back and authenticate myself all the time.
Mhm. Yeah. Are you mentioned biometric options. I think you have some biometrics like specialists who are part of the MEF. I keep saying MEF, but you say MEF, so I'm going to try and say MEF.
Believe me, we are so neutral. We even don't have preferences on our name. And so, and we are neutral because MEF in itself does not have a network or technology choice in the
Mhm.
end. We look at how to advance and defend the sustainability and in progress of for the mobile enterprises and mobile users. So whatever enterprises out there or the users that are using these tools, how do we make it? And there are multiple solutions. As I say, biometrics is one of them. iProve is a biometric company that happens to have made out of a mobile phone and the ability to take a selfie and some special technology that they use to make sure that you are the real person, not just a person looks, that you are live talking to people. So not even AI interfering. So that's a great IDverse, I would say, OCR labs, and an entire history of documents and document verification. So
Mhm.
which now exposed to mobile because mobile is a major source of that as well. So they want to know where these markets are going and they want to provide the level of security because it's now inbuilt in. Interestingly, both of them are probably talking a higher level of security of some of the things we just mentioned. I wouldn't necessarily want my password checked versus me accessing my video of cats, whatever I might be doing today, but I'll let go and watch cats on TV on my PC. Do I need my password for that? Potentially not. But if I'm talking to a government or asking for a visa, which I'm now doing, they will ask, and I'm very, very happy to show my passport for that. There is a lot of things in between. I don't want to put iProof and IDverse just on these niche applications, but you can see there the more important or official discussions. We need to have solutions that are a bit more advanced, I would say as well. The availability in the mobile phones of the technology by now, which is what the chair and founders of iProof will tell you, that the fact that your mobile phone is now such an important part of your life, but also of your technical background. It does have a camera on top, and it does have a secure identity modules inside. It's a SIM. So what we are saying is it makes a lot of sense to do that. Add that for in some countries where it's a KYC, you really have to prove to get the modules who you are. So there are a lot of things that come together as a kind of a few Venn diagrams that come together and say, this part of the market, it's interesting and potentially could make our life a bit easier.
On that note, is like from your perspective, because we track what's going on with the FIDO Alliance, of course, and they're reporting a lot of growth. So I'm just curious how you see that impacting MEF and your ecosystem.
Well, we kind of follow, as I say, we like all things play here. All players
Yes.
are fine. So Fido announced, I think recently, 15 billion online accounts
Mhm.
that are using passkeys, which is a great number. There is a lot more out there, and a very rough numbers expected is in terms of hundreds of billions of online accounts. So they're in the right progress. Though I might be wrong, but I'm trying to understand how, again, back to the question is there is no single, sometimes you need something more. Yep. If that is a device specific, what happens when you lose a device, etc. Oh, well, you still have to reassess your, so you potentially even Thido and the great passkeys, great, will potentially need some backup or some other functions or for you to retrieve, move, terminate your identity as well. So they will work with other less device-centric potentially solution as well. So again, I think there's space for a lot of players to be there. And the fact that there are 15 billion online accounts with passkeys might also mean those might have used at least once or twice in other solutions to initiate that.
Mhm.
So it's complicated and it's exciting because of its complexity. Yet, whatever can make this ecosystem, as we like to call it, a MEF, secure and safer, should definitely be welcome. So please, let's have more solution. Let's more intelligence coming in this market as well.
I also wanted to ask about AI, which is something we increasingly talk about through our platform, just because it's having such a transformative impact all over the place. But like, are you tracking that? Do you have any reports? Are they in the pipeline? How do you see it impacting MEF?
Yes. So for the last 2 years, I think we try to cover multiple aspects of AI, including the fact that AI as a term is so generic right now. It's the applications of AI. Like so, we've done a specific reports on AI for telecoms. We have another report of the impact of AI in cybersecurity. So if you're looking at our website, try to find out. Well, it should be available. Um, on telecom, there's a lot of things that is happening. It's really exciting. And I will, even the fact that there are specific languages being built just for mobile operators by mobile operators. I mean, there's exciting things happening out there. Where your new mast will be potentially placed, AI will have an element. Your next network generation will have an AI component, and it goes on and on. So there are lots of things you can do in terms of generating content, etc. But the one thing that made us pause a bit over the last few years was the growth of AI in attacks. And you mentioned two of the companies out there, both of them very active, but not only them, there are multiple, but iProof the Password. They would report the AI impersonifications or creations of that has gone through the roof. but I should also be saying AI in smishing and phishing, social engineering, other attempts to get you to divide your money with some of the fraudsters out there. AI has been weaponized right now by fraudsters, potentially even faster than the industry. There is good news, and I think that's what report coming up as well. We're now seeing AI being used in the defense a lot more. It's a good versus evil fight, yeah, potentially simplified. This the AI as a tool is something we need to get used to, the good and the bad. But
Mm.
I think it has to be potentially used a bit more in the defense of our services that we might have done in the last few years.
Yeah, I think it could um it could end up in a situation where it's AI becomes so effective at defense against these things that we don't even, as a user, understand how it knows. Like that's what I'm hoping for, kind of, because we last summer I was looking at a company's deep fake detection technology at their lab, and they were showing how like we can see this photo is AI generated, and I couldn't tell with my own eyes. And I was just trying to understand, like, how do you know? Or how does it know? And they basically couldn't explain it to me because I just don't have like the technical background to know exactly what is going on under the hood. I just understand that it can see things that I can't see with the naked eye.
Well, I've given up trying to understand AI a long time ago.
Uh,
But I'm glad that lots of people are doing it. That's for sure.
Mhm,
Even if probably you're right, some of the transparency will miss the consumers understanding what's happening. Potentially not. But the safeguards we're talking about, the fact that you trust that somebody's doing something I think that's important nowadays. You need to know somebody's using tools to make
mhm.
use.
I know we're running out of time, but I have to share one more anecdote about AI, which is right before we got on this call. I didn't have time to like dig into this, but I saw on my social media feed that O2 is a telecom in the UK, right? A major telecom, O2. They
Corporate.
they were sharing something where they created an AI voice that sounds like a confused older British woman, and they were like getting it to talk to scammers on the phone, and they were like, the scammers would be like, "Okay, now log into your account," and she'd be like, "My account?" And just befuddled. So that was amusing.
I think her name is Daisy, and she's now become a bit of a celebrity in the UK. It's if you want to have a bit of fun, do not watch Cat's videos. Watch Daisy's videos and how the fraudster get very frustrated. Great because it works in two accounts. Keeps them busy. They increase their cost. They cannot actively follow somebody else, and they have to pay eventually a higher bill. And the mobile operators are happy with that as well. So evenly good. I think this is really good. So yeah, I love it. You touched on one of my favorite as well, Alex.
Okay, great. Well, that's a great note to end on then. Daisy, everyone check out Daisy online, but also the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. I don't know, Dario, if you want to mention any events you have coming up or anything like that before we go.
Um, we will be in Barcelona, where a lot of the industry is meeting around March. So check on our website, mef.events if you want. But equally, we're going to be in Miami at the beginning of April if you are US based, or if you are in Canada, Toronto in July is the next one. So just mentioning three locations there, as I say, multiple location worldwide. But have a look on our website, and we'd love to hear from you and host you have some of our events, please let us know.
Okay, great. Dario, thank you so much for talking with us today. This was great.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Dario.